In the world of paleoanthropology, it would seem that what happens in Africa stays in Africa, what happens in Asia stays in Asia, and what happens in Europe stays in Europe. In reality, however, there are no hard boundaries between Asia, Africa, and Europe. More on this crucial point at the end of the video, so be sure to watch until the end. The Mercator projection would also lead us to believe that East Asia is impossibly far from Africa and Europe. Yet, the distance from the Near East to the tip of Africa and to the heart of Sunderland is the same, about 5,000 miles. In fact, hominins could more easily travel between East Asia and Europe than from southern Africa to Eurasia because of the geography and climate. Recently, stone tools dating up to 194,000 years have been discovered on the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, indicating a human presence, according to scientists. No fossils of these individuals were discovered alongside the tools, leaving the identity of the toolmakers unknown. Indeed, the stone tools, which are at least 118,000-year-old, point to an archaic group of humans. The discovery of over 300 stone implements on the Indonesian island suggests that the first modern humans who arrived there would have encountered an archaic human lineage. We now have direct evidence that when modern humans arrived on Sulawesi, supposedly between 60,000 and 70,000 years ago and aided by watercraft, they must have met an archaic group of humans who had been present on the island for a bloody long time. The researchers described 311 stone tools, the majority of which were made of a very hard limestone. Archaeologists believe they were made by humans striking one stone against another, forming smaller pieces with knife-like sharpness. These are very basic tools, which were made by many different ancient humans. The tools are mostly made up of simple sharp-edged stone flakes that would have been useful for basic tasks like cutting up meat, shaping wooden implements, and other tasks. The archaeologists explained that the excavations focused on the northernmost hill of an elongated ridge 32 meters above sea level, and 18 meters above the adjacent river floodplain. They discovered stone artifact, as well as the fossil remains of extinct megafauna. Fossils of an extinct elephant relative and an extinct giant pig with warthog-like tusks were discovered nearby. Previously, it was thought that the first human-like creatures to set foot on this remote island were early modern humans, who arrived around 70,000 years ago as part of Australia's colonization. Scientists have been eager to learn more about the region's human history. Sulawesi could have been a stepping stone for the first people to arrive in Australia around 50,000 years ago. The newly discovered stone tool discoveries from Sulawesi, however, are more than twice as old as the earliest known human sites in Australia, and may be significantly older. The human species that created these stone tools is unknown, as no human fossils have been discovered at the site. But there are at least 3 potential ancient islanders in the region, according to the scientists: the known and inferred distributions of Homo floresiensis on Flores, Homo erectus on the southern margin of Sunda, and Denisovans, whose geographic range may have extended into the islands of Indonesia. So it now appears that there may have been pre-modern hominins on Sulawesi, long before anatomically modern Homo sapiens arrived. It was possible that, similar to the island of Flores, where Homo floresiensis fossils were discovered, pre-modern human fossils could still be discovered on Sulawesi. In some places, the ocean separating Borneo from Sulawesi and Bali from Lombok is only 20 miles wide. The seas around Sulawesi are very calm, ideal for simple watercraft. However, for Northern Hemisphere mammals, it has historically marked a nearly impenetrable barrier known as the Wallace Line. This line denotes a deep ocean channel that remained water-filled even during previous ice ages, when rising sea levels caused channels between other islands in the region to dry out. As a result, mammals traveling from the north were able to reach the islands to the north and west of the line. But the Wallace Islands to the south and east remained out of reach for many species. Flores Island is located south of Sulawesi and east of Bali, and strong ocean currents in the area flow primarily north to south. It would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to cross from Flores to Sulawesi without the use of boat or raft technology, which ancient humans are thought to have lacked. The term archaic hominin is commonly used in archaeological sciences to refer to extinct forms of humans. Prior research indicates that archaic hominins arrived in the southern Philippine islands of Sulawesi and Flores at least 200,000 and 1 million years ago, respectively. Sulawesi and Flores, like the Philippines, are large Wallacean islands located near the southeastern tip of continental Asia, known as Sunderland. The ancient tools could also indicate that other species crossed, possibly Java man Homo erectus, which lived on Java just west of the Wallace Line until about 100,000 years ago. Given the way the currents flow through the region, more clues to the toolmaker's identity could come from even further north. Some scientists believe that the Sulawesi toolmakers' ancestors originated in either Borneo or the Philippines. Remarkably, Borneo has had very few archaeological searches, so we currently know almost nothing about its fossil record. But the archaeological riches of the Philippines are beginning to emerge. Indeed, the story of ancient human colonization of the island south of the Wallace Line is certainly complex. The dispersal of fauna through the Wallacean Islands supports the theory of northern hominin colonization. If you look at the fossil and recent faunas, you see that there is an impoverishment as you go from north to south. In the Philippines you find fossils of stegodons, elephants, giant rats, rhino, deer, large reptiles, and a type of water buffalo. On Sulawesi, the fossil fauna is already impoverished, there's no evidence of rhinos or deer ever entering there. Then on Flores, you only had stegodons, Komodo dragons, humans, and giant rats, that's all. The earliest Sulawesi tools are so ancient that they could have belonged to any of several human species. As stated, Homo erectus and Homo floresiensis are two candidates. They could also be Denisovans, sister species of Neanderthals who met the first modern peoples in Southeast Asia, and left a genetic legacy in their descendants. They could even have been Homo sapiens, who had left Africa before the main exodus of our species. They could also be a previously unknown species. We not only don't know who the first inhabitants of Sulawesi were, but we also don't know what happened to them. On a large landmass like Sulawesi, solving this mystery will be difficult. Nevertheless, the scientific study concluded that during the Middle Pleistocene epoch, between 781,000 and 126,000 years ago, hominins of some kind established a presence in the Philippines, that they must have come from Borneo to the southwest or Taiwan to the north, and that they may have used boats. Yet most scientists will be skeptical of archaic hominins paddling beyond Eurasia in purpose-built watercraft, no matter how primitive. This is not to say that such a scenario is impossible, but if it were, we would have evidence that archaic hominins reached more remote parts of the region, including Australia. The majority of anthropologists believe rare events, such as tsunamis, are more likely to be the mechanism behind hominin populations taking root on oceanic islands near Asia, such as Flores, Sulawesi, and the Philippines. For example, hominins may have been swept out to sea and survived ocean crossings by clinging to floating vegetation. According to one theory, Homo floresiensis ancestors arrived from the north, rather than traveling eastward through Java and Bali. But the oldest human fossils discovered on Flores Island were found to be 20% smaller than more recent Homo floresiensis fossils. Until recently, it was assumed that pre-modern hominins could not have reached the Philippines and other Wallacean islands, those east of the Wallace Line, separated from the rest of Asia and Australia by deep water, because they did not have boats. Islands west of the Wallace Line were joined to the mainland when sea levels were lower. If animals came to these islands by chance, by entering the sea and following the current south, you'd expect to find fewer species the further south you go, and that's exactly what we see. While the first human colonizers of the Philippines may have been able to build simple rafts, the team believes they arrived by accident. Some anthropologists believe they were caught in a tsunami and carried out to sea. Such freak, random events are likely to be responsible for these human and animal movements. Because this region is tectonically active, tsunamis are common, with large ones occurring every 100 years or so. Most scientists will be skeptical of archaic hominins paddling beyond Eurasia in purpose-built watercraft, no matter how primitive. This is not to say that such a scenario is impossible, but if it were, we would have evidence that archaic hominins reached more remote parts of the region, including Australia. However, one anthropologist claimed that there was no manifest destiny for Homo erectus, in terms of this species reaching remote islands. Surprisingly, a 700,000-year-old fossil find reveals that the hobbits' ancestors were even smaller. At the time, the basin was a tropical savanna drained by numerous small stream channels. Pygmy stegodont, an extinct Asian elephant, Komodo dragons, and rats inhabited these grasslands. These species fossils have been preserved in rock strata exposed by erosion on the current land surface. Between 1.3 million and 500,000 years ago, the fossil beds accumulated. Hominin fossils consisting of 6 teeth and a lower jaw fragment. The fossils date back around 700,000 years and represent the remains of at least 3 individual hominins, 1 adult and 2 young children. In comparison to the jaw fragment from Mata-Menge, the lower jaw of the Homo floresiensis skeleton from Liang Bois is shown in this image. Nobody predicted that the hobbit's ancestor would also look like a hobbit. Although the Mata-Menge hominins are strikingly similar to hobbits, the jaw fragment is from an adult who was 21% smaller in size than the smallest hobbit. Therefore, Homo floresiensis could be an enlarged version of its ancestor. The sandstone containing these fossils was laid down at least 700,000 years ago, making it 10 times older than the Homo floresiensis skeleton discovered in Liang Bois. Although the hominin is much smaller than Homo erectus from Java, the teeth and jaw fragment do not resemble any pre-erectus hominin species. In fact, they are most closely related to Homo floresiensis. We know that the islands of Indonesia, Borneo, and the Philippines are full of surprises. We won't know the identity of the hobbit's ancestor or how this evolutionary saga began, until we find more complete hominin remains or even older fossils. Finally, modern humans were creating rock art on Sulawesi by 70,000 years ago. Given the sophistication of these works of art, their creators were almost certainly Homo sapiens with modern minds like ours. If the first islanders were a now extinct species, did they live long enough to meet modern humans?